Good afternoon, everybody. This is Lisa, and welcome to Take Your Disc Facilitation to the Next Level webinar. Really happy to have you with us today. Todd called me. I think Candace explained to you that we did this at the conference, and when Todd called me to ask me if I wanted to present at the conference, I said absolutely. And when he asked me what I wanted to present about, I told him a story that 22 years ago, when I was a little wet behind the ear kid and had no idea what I was doing with disc, I went to one of the first conferences for myself. And one of the seminars I went to, the person at the seminar gave all of their materials away. And I was so grateful because I felt like I could actually go and do this because I had all these resources. So what you'll see in the webinar today, I have a very high social and a high utilitarian. So I want to help everybody out there by giving them a return on investment in their business by giving them a lot of great tools. If you haven't printed the handout, please go ahead and do that. It'll be very helpful as we go through the webinar. So just to get started, what we wanted to talk about is what the session is not about and is about. What it's not about is the Marshmallow Challenge, and what it is about is really facilitating for change and results. What we find in organizations these days is that people are really looking for the soft skills to produce hard results. They want to see after you've done a session that they've had behavior change and they're seeing a difference and things. Not that the Marshmallow Challenge isn't fun. If you haven't done that, it's spaghetti and marshmallows and who can do the highest tower, but that isn't really something that makes significant change. So we really want to focus on things that are going to make a big change. So let me talk a little bit about what the key concepts that we're going to be covering in the session are. We're really going to look through when you're facilitating, how do you assess what you're facilitating for, design what you're going to do, implement the session, evaluate how you did in the session, and then reinforce what you did. The way that we'll be going through that is talking about defining those session goals and objectives and how we do that by meeting with a leader, how we would design an agenda to meet heart, head, and hands. How we can look at this one graph overview that we use that's been very powerful in our sessions, along with looking at group data that really makes a difference for our clients. We're going to start with what's in it for me. We're going to tell stories that alter perception. We're going to use exercises that really lead to change and results. And we're going to end with a really strong wrap, and we're going to talk about next steps. So those are the concepts that we'll be going over and also reinforcing the learning once we've done that. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is defining the goals and objectives that we have. You have two handouts, and these handouts will be on page 2 and 3. And why do we do this? I think it's just so important to sit down with the leader and really understand what do they want to accomplish, what are their objectives, what are some of the group dynamics, what's the thing that they really walk away with. And the benefit to this is in this intake sheet that we have, it simply is that you have everything in one place and you don't forget anything as you go through. We're going to give this to you in 2 different formats. Everything that we go over in this webinar, you will be given these resources in full. Everything that you have will be completely customizable. So we've given you samples in the packet that you have, but everything that you'll get is going to be full examples, full facilitator notes, and they are all customizable. So the client intake form, we're first just looking at what are the session objectives and group dynamics. And we just go through some simple conversations with the leader about the background of the group, a little bit about the participants, what challenges they're facing, what changes they want to have happen, what outcomes they want, any ties to other programs that they're doing. And then on page 3, this is just really talking about logistics in the session. I'm a high I, so a lot of times I get off the phone and I realize talk about, who's going to print the materials, what time does the session start, where is the session, how far is it from the airport. So this is really just a place to write down all those logistics, just kind of make sure that there isn't anything that you're missing. So that's just an intake form to use with clients that we find to be really helpful to get all the information you need to have a great session. The next thing that we're going to talk about is once you have that information, you want to design your agenda. I really believe that it's important to design agenda with the heart, head, and hands in mind. I think if you miss any of the 3, you've kind of missed having a really successful session. And the difference in the 3 is the heart is what's in it for me. If I'm sitting there, why am I here? What am I going to get out of this? And what am I focusing on? The head is simply that I understand the information you are presenting to me, it makes sense to me, and it was given to me in an easy way to understand. And hands is, how am I going to apply what you've told me? How am I going to use this to make change and to see different results? If you look on page 4 of your handouts, what we've given you is a sample 4-hour agenda. This is just something that kind of fits along with the format that we're talking about. I really believe that if a client is only going to give you a couple hours, you probably can only do a knowledge transfer. I believe in 4 hours, individuals can change and you can really start to understand yourself and others and change. Generally, if I'm doing a team session, I'm looking for at least 6 to 8 hours if you really want to see significant change. And if you go through this agenda, we will actually go through almost everything that's on this page in the webinar today. But the first thing that you always do is the heart, which is setting the context, and we're going to talk about a couple of exercises to do that. The disc overview is the head, and also going over their profile is the head, which is understanding the information. We're going to go into a couple of extra things in that area, but most of you have your own presentations talking about the basic disc tenets along with the strengths and limitations. And then anything on that sheet from 4 down are different exercises. This is the hands, this is the application, this is where we actually see change. Based on the intake form that you did with the leader, and when you're clear about the objectives that you're looking to accomplish, then this is how you pick whichever exercises you're going to do. And we will go through each of those exercises in detail. So one of the other things that we wanted to offer to you, and again, you will get 2 formats and 2 files for this. This is probably worth coming to the webinar in itself. We are going to give you a file that actually produces all 4 things that you see on this screen. And we've done it, Susan, that works for us, is extraordinaire, and she actually designed this file. We used to have it in 3 or 4 different separate files. And what you'll do, and the instructions are included as well, is that you take the information in the IDF and you download it and export it into an Excel file. You cut and paste that and put it into one area in this program, and it prints the group graphs that you see there, which are a great takeaway for people, especially if it's a team, to have everybody on one page. It shows the natural and the adapted, and it also shows a disc graph legend. The other thing, they're named pens. You can see those at the bottom with their graph on it. Now, what's great about these is you don't have to memorize names or styles, and the other thing is each other styles, which makes it get a lot of buy-in, and people can really look around the room and see the styles. There's also wheels with the descriptor. The IDF has great wheels, but what we did is we took that wheel and put the descriptors and the names go around it. It comes in a natural and an adapted. One of the other things that comes with this, and again, all you have to do is cut and paste, and it makes all 4 of these, is a group data analysis that actually has, with this particular group, how many people are above and below the line in DIS and C, so you can look at that and know how to best facilitate to the group. It also gives you how each of the styles have adapted more than 10 points if the D, I, S, or C has gone up or down. So you can have great team conversations about the adaptations and why they've adapted that way. This is something that really helps you prepare for the session. It gives the team great visuals, and it really helps make a difference when people can see the data in that particular way. The next thing that we wanted to talk about was starting with what's in it for me. I think it's so important to start with heart. You don't want people like the picture sitting down there with pens on their noses trying to figure out why they're there. You want them to really get buy-in and understand what's the purpose of them being there. What are they going to get out of the session? What's important for them? One of the things that I always start with is some type of a compelling opener, and this is the thing to get buy-in and for them to understand what they'll get out of the session. The 2 most common ones that I use, these are very simple. What you'll see a lot in the presentation today is a lot of these aren't rocket science. They're very simple things to do, but they're things that produce great results. One of the most common ones I do is if I have a leadership team, to start the day off, I divide them into 2 groups. I have one group flip chart, the characteristics of a great leader, one that you admire. I have the other flip chart, characteristics of a poor leader, one that you would avoid. Talk about those as a large group. And then what's great is we use those sheets after we go through and explain the general strengths and limits of a D. We go back to the charts and we look at the leadership characteristics, and we take a red marker and say which of these are D characteristics, same with or leadership characteristics. At the end of the DIS and C overview, you can see that leaders have all 4 of the styles, both strengths and limitations. Individuals can start looking at that for themselves about what of those leadership styles do they think they have as strengths and limitations as well. You can do the same thing with team characteristics. Another opener that I really like to do, very, very simplistic again, but it really gets people thinking about their own style and what they might want to adapt and think about during the exercise, and also other styles that are challenging to them, and how can they get past the challenge and actually look at for what's great about that style and how they can partner with them. And I simply go around the room and I have each person share what's most challenging to you about others and what about you might be challenging to others. I usually use myself as an example, and I always say what's most challenging to me is people that are a little bit aggressive, assertive, and argumentative, because I grew up in a family that never argued, and well, until about 2 weeks before my parents got a divorce, but that's a whole nother session. And then I also talk to them about what's most challenging about me, and I'm a high I, so what's most challenging is I like to talk a lot. And when I was a very little girl, my mother told me, honey, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a very good reason. You should be listening twice as much as you speak. I have each person share that, and it's interesting as you're looking at their table tents with their graph on, it always correlates with their style. The one thing I do when I start with what's in it for them is I always have them set goals before they start this session. What do you want to get out of this session? What do you want to get for yourself, for your team, for your leadership style? What would make a difference to you? What are the biggest complaints that you have? So that's a great way to get the session started and to get everybody to have buy-in. One of the things that we start with, and again, we're not going through a whole disc presentation, but this is something that I've shown to people that have been that you will receive. Every exercise will have the purpose of the exercise, what the outcomes are, how to set the exercise up, probing questions, tips and speed bumps, stories and examples, and how to transition to other things. So you'll receive all of that with the exercises. But let's start to take a peek at some of the exercises that you'll see. Some of the first ones are just really personal development worksheets. Again, they're very simple. We're looking at strengths and how can you leverage the strengths. We don't always want to work on what they need development opportunities. It's how can you leverage those. We're looking at limitations and understanding those and minimizing those and developing those, the impact to you and the team, communication challenges and commitments. So if you look at your packet of materials on page 8, there's a strengths and development opportunities. I use this most often is after I've delivered the D factor and I talk about the strengths and limits. I also expand a little bit on the lows, and then I have each person take some time to write down 3 to 5 of their strengths and a couple of their development opportunities. And then I have them share with a partner, what would the impact be if I worked on those opportunities? It gets you off stage. It takes it from the information for them really starting to understand themselves and be able to talk about it and share it. We do that after we go through each of the styles. One of the things I often do, if you're familiar with a feed forward exercise, it's a Marshall Goldsmith exercise. If you're not, you can Google it. It's a great exercise where people pick one thing on their sheet that they would like to work on. You have the whole group stand up. You give them 5 minutes. They walk up to someone and introduce themselves, talk to them about what they're looking to develop. Like I might say, my name's Lisa. I'm looking to listen more and talk less. And then they would give you one suggestion on how to do that. Well, maybe after you ask a question, stop talking and let them think about it a little bit. And then the other person would do the same. You tell them what you're working on. They give you one suggestion. People go back and they sit down and write down the greatest suggestions that they got. And it really gives them a way to think about how to change and develop those things. The second sheet that you'll see is we've given you on page 9, 10, and 11. This is just a profile review sheet. What we usually do after this part in the seminar is we do go over their profile with them page by page. I think you know every page is actionable. This is just a great resource for this. We've also used this to send it out with profiles to people. We've also used to give this homework to people to go home and read their profile a little bit more. One of the other sheets that we've given you is on page 12. This is a personal development exercise sheet. What they do after reading their profile and highlighting some information from the profile and actually come up with actions about things that they'll do different. Again, it's very simple. This is a value I bring taken from the general characteristics and the value to the organization, and how can you utilize your strengths? How can you leverage them? Where can you use them more? These are characteristics that might be a challenge, and how can they minimize those? what's the style that they have the toughest time with communication, and they can use that from the communication tips page, and what are they going to do different. Then some commitments. What are they going to do going forward? What are they going to do to change? Again, organizations are looking for people to make change after they go through these sessions, and this is something that really helps to hold people accountable in order to see that change and have that change happen. The next exercise is called effective communication. Now, in your packet, there's on page 13 is the exercise worksheet, and on page 14 is a resource sheet. When you get your materials, you'll have one of these for each of the DIS and C. We've just only put one in your packet. What we do here is we break people into 4 groups. And I usually do that randomly, not by their primary style. We have them review the resource that we've given you on page 14, which looks at typical characteristics, what's important to the style, do's and don'ts of communication. We put them in their groups and we have them fill this out, and then they share it as a large group. And we go through how to recognize, we go through and give them some tips, for a greeting. What would they say when they first meet you? And one style might say, what do you want? And one style might say, love those shoes. We do have, it's a very interactive exercise. And we have people go through the intention of this exercise. You would never do this with a team. You would do it with a group of people that don't know the style of the people that you'll be working with. Sometimes we do this with a leadership group so they understand their reportables. We do this sales groups so they understand their customers. We do it with groups so that they understand other departments and people that they work with. So it's a great, fun, interactive exercise that really has them understand how to recognize the other styles. Now they talk about who comes to mind, could be internal or famous people, and then what are you going to do and not do in communication with those particular styles. The next thing that we'll look at is different exercises that you can do with teams. We have 3 different exercises that we have in this pack that kind of build on each other. The first one, if you look on page 15, this is when you have an intact team together, you would divide them into 4 groups by their primary style. And I'll kind of warn you to check the numbers first. I did this once with a group of 30 and unfortunately ended up with 1 C by themselves, and that didn't go all that well. So you want to make sure there's kind of an even number of people. This is a very safe exercise, and it really gets people to not only see the styles, but really understand them more in depth. This is a worksheet that they can do beforehand, but when we put them in their 4 groups, we give them a flip chart and ask them to divide it into 6 sections, just like the worksheet. And they simply fill this out as a group, share with the other and have a discussion. This is the value I bring. Here's things that frustrate us, what we do that frustrates others. And now that we know that, what will we do to adapt our style? How do we like and not like to be communicated with? And one of the greatest parts of this is, why do they need the other styles? What's important? What do the other styles bring that they don't have? And why do they need that? There's 2 other sheets that go with this that just expand on that. On page 16 is a mapping your team exercise. If it's a leadership group and they want to map the people that report to them, they just map them by their primary style. And if it's an intact team, they can also do this after the exercise so they remember which quadrants people fell in for their primary style. Very simple. And then the sheet after that on page 17 is how to lead your team. So if this is a team and you're a leader, you have to have an open discussion about what would be the best way to leverage each of the styles. How would those styles want to be coached and mentored? What would you do in communication, and what would be the best way to manage and motivate them? This gives the manager something to go back to understand what their group is, and also the best way to lead that team. One of the next ones we have is a team dialogue exercise. This is one where you have to have a little bit more trust on the team. It takes a pretty deep dive about really knowing the other team members. What they do is on the left-hand side, this is on page 18 of your handouts. Before they have this, the person fills out, each person in the group fills out the left-hand side, which is, this is the value I bring, characteristics that might be a challenge, do's and don'ts of communication. We usually start with the leader, and we have the leader share, this is the value I bring, and then the other people in the group acknowledge them. They tell them what they appreciate about them, what they do that really helps them be successful. And then the leader would share some things about their style that might be a challenge, and often there's kind of a relief in the group that they've said those things out loud. And then what the group does is they don't now tell the leader more things that are challenging, but what they do is they actually ask the leader for what they need from them. I usually have them preface it as, it would make a difference to me if you did more of this or started doing this or stopped doing this. They share about how they like to be communicated with. And again, they make commitments about what they're going to do different for the team. In the facilitator notes, you'll see that there's a lot of options based on how much time you have, how large the group is, about how to actually deliver this. This is probably the most impactful exercise that I do with teams. Each person, we start with a leader to gain trust, but we have every person share this in the group, and it really changes how they see each other. One of the other things that we do that gets much more specific is called the challenging relationship exercise. This exercise, you can also call it the critical relationship or the customer relationship. And what you do is you pick specific people that you have different styles and you really want to change those relationships. I usually give people that you can pick your teenagers and your mother-in-law as well. And you simply put what your primary style is, what their primary style is. What do you see as the challenge? Well, it might be that I'm a D and they're an S, and the challenge is I want to speed up and they want to slow down, and I want to argue and they don't like confrontation. And I want to think it through and they want to jump the gun. And then you think about, well, what do they need from you? We can't change other people. We can only change how we interact with them. So getting really clear about what could you do different? What do they need from you that you might not be providing them, and how are you going to adapt or approach them differently next time? This is a great exercise because we often have people make commitments about how they're going to be different with people, take action on that. We follow up with them about that. A couple other things you can do with this when you're facilitating is they can share with a partner and work through it. Often we will match them up with people that are a different style than theirs, and we can have them do group role plays. So this is just a great exercise that really takes this from application to specific application about how they can work different with another style. When we're ending the sessions, it's really important to make sure that we have a strong wrap. We always go back to those personal goals and we talk about those. What did you learn in the session? What we do is we really want to discuss next steps. And I usually ask the group, and a lot of times you get from the group different things that they can do to keep this going. We want to make sure we're designing accountability structures. We want people to actually be doing things different and changing behaviors. We talk about all of the additional training that we can do to keep this intact. We always do a program evaluation, which we'll talk a little bit more about, in referral opportunities. What we provided you on page 20 is a sample of an evaluation. I'm sure a lot of you have these. This is an edible. This is a file that you can edit. But what's great about evaluations, not only does it measure you so you know your strengths and the things you can improve on, it helps you to make changes. It's great to give the client so they can see the outcome of the session. And it's also really great for you to use data to sell. Okay, I'm going to do questions soon. And then also a referral. A lot of times it's great to have a place to ask people for referrals. I like to do that by offering something free to them. So the other thing that we've given you is an example of a referral card that you can use. The last thing you want to do is you just really want to make sure that you are reinforcing that learning. This card that you see in the side, a file to do that. We hand these out at every session we do. This is what the front of the card looks like. On the back, it talks about do's and don'ts of communication. We simply print them two-sided, laminate them, and give them to everybody as a takeaway. We want to make sure we keep information present. We want to make sure that we're giving people a chance, is reinforcing the learnings, things that you can do after, share best practices, talk about challenges, get people together to role play scenarios. Make sure you're building the things you do into HR processes. Give advanced DISC programs. Make sure you're offering all the other great TTI sciences. And is anything you can do to tie this to programs and projects is also great. Just to make sure you understand that you will be receiving all of these materials by email, the client intake sheets and agenda, all the worksheets, all the facilitator notes. You'll get the group displays and the templates, evaluations, and the DISC cards. So what we wanted to do is see if there's any questions, and Candace had said that she emailed me the questions. Let me get out of here, get into see what the questions are. Okay. With the integrated disc and driving forces, things like ideal environment, keys, and motivation are on different pages. Do the instructions give you to change all that? The profile page by page is really just done for the management staff. Again, feel free to take those and add to them and edit them, and you can put driving forces in or kind of use our format to do your own. But with this particular seminar, it was just on disc, so we only did the management staff one, but feel free to edit that. Will the Excel file be unlocked? I've tried to use it from the conference. It's password protected. It should not be password protected. If that happens, please call us. You should get 2 files. They will come with instructions. And it might be how you're pasting things into the file that isn't working. Please feel free to call us if you're having a problem with the file, and we can do a short tutorial or a webinar on how to do that. Will we get a copy of the slides Lisa is using now? Yes, we'd be happy to send you a copy of the slides as well. Are the files Mac compatible? I believe so, but honestly do not know the answer to that. And we will find out and get back to you. I really don't know the answer to that. Do you have exercises in Word as well? I believe most of the exercises are in Word format. And again, we gave them to you in that format so you're able to edit them. How do you market this entire training effectively to small and medium-sized businesses? I think the best way to market things is to really understand what the challenges of the organization are and really talk to them about in the past all the things that you've done through the sessions that have really changed that. I like to talk to organizations about and testimonials help a lot with marketing. Here's where we were, here's what we did in the session, here's what's changed in the business. And I think people really buy more through stories and how you're explaining things and talking to people. On page 15 exercises, did you say to break them into groups by style? Let me double check which one was 15. Yes, with that particular one, you actually want to break them into groups by their primary style, because the intention of the team dynamics exercise is so you really see the styles and get to understand them better in a team setting. Again, one of the things that you'll get is the very detailed facilitator notes that go with each of those exercises that will walk you through that. So I'm going to turn this back over to Candace.
As Lisa was saying, you will get an email with all the facilitator information, as well as a survey. We welcome your feedback. I also want to take a moment to ask you to save the date for our next public webinar, hopefully free of those technical difficulties. That will be on April 19th, and we'll be discussing introverted leadership with Andy Johnson. Again, thank you all for your time today. Have a great day, and talk with you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.